I worked the midnight shift at a gas station off Rosedale Highway, one of those half-lit islands that still pumps out 80s rock through a tinny ceiling speaker. It's a quiet gig. Restock the coolers, balance the drawer, slide cigarettes and sodas through the drawer slot. After midnight, policy says the doors stay locked. No exceptions. Anyone who wants something uses the tray. Safer that way. The world outside the glass turns into something else after dark. It was a foggy night in February. I was in the back, labeling a tray of frozen burritos when someone knocked. Not a bang or a desperate pounding, just 3 gentle taps. I looked up. A woman stood just outside the circle of the security light, cupping her hands around her face to see in. Hair damp, jacket zipped tight to her throat. No car at the pumps. No engine noise. Just the steady whir of the cooler fans behind me. She leaned closer to the door, lips forming the words, "Please, my car died. Can I wait inside?" You hear that a lot. Usually it means they want warmth, a ride, or a chance to case the place. But she looked genuinely terrified, like she'd run out of something more than gas. I hit the intercom. "Sorry, store S closed to walk-ins. You can sit on the bench under the light. I'll call a patrol to check on your car." She shook her head. Her voice came thin and shaky through the speaker. "Someone followed me, please, just for a minute." I glanced around the lot. Empty. Fog swallowing the far edge of the pumps. The security light bled out into white nothing. I hesitated, then thumbed the buzzer. "Straight to the counter," I said. Hands visible. She slipped inside as soon as the lock clicked, hugging the wall like she was afraid of being seen through the glass. Her eyes jumped from the door to the windows, restless. "You can lock it again," she said. "Please." I did. The deadbolt sounded louder than usual. "Coffee," I offered, because sometimes normal words keep things from unraveling. She nodded, wrapped both hands around the paper cup like it was medicine. "He followed me from the ramp," she said after a moment. "He slowed when I pulled over, then stopped ahead of me. I just ran." I called non-emergency, gave the dispatcher our location and what she'd told me. They said a unit would swing by. "You're safe here," I told her, and I meant it. She didn't look like she believed it. She kept edging out of the camera's field of view and tugging her sleeves down over her wrists. When I asked her name, she paused just a little too long. "Marcy," she said finally. It didn't sound like a name she was used to. Her focus drifted to the back hallway. "That door," she asked. "Does it lock twice?" "I checked it earlier," I said. She nodded, not reassured, just filing it away. For a while I wiped down the counter and pretended not to watch her. Outside, the fog pressed flat against the glass. Then there was a sound from the side window. A soft, dull tap. Not loud enough to be sure of, not faint enough to ignore. I froze, rag in hand, scanning the reflections. Just my own face and the bright "no cash" kept after HOURS sign. "Probably the building settling," I said out of habit. She jerked her head up. "He does that," she whispered. "Taps first." A cold line traced my spine. "You said your car broke down," I said. "Did you see who was following you?" She shook her head. I didn't look back. I walked the short hall to the back door anyway, turned both deadbolts, then leaned into the metal until I felt its weight. Solid. No give. When I came back, she'd moved closer to the counter. She wasn't watching the door anymore. She was watching the convex mirror above the snack aisle, keeping her eyes on the reflection of the entrance. "He waits like that," she said quietly. "Still." "Think he's gone?" I asked. In the mirror, all I saw was the empty lot, but when she shifted, her jacket sleeve rode up. For a second I saw a white hospital wristband, the edges worn and curling. She yanked the sleeve back down. "Marcy," I said carefully, "are you hurt?" "No." "Do you need medical?" "No." "Just tired." There's a kind of tired that sounds like surrender. I didn't push. The phone rang. Dispatcher checking back. Unit's about 10 minutes out. I said copy, because that word makes it feel like you're holding the reins. A few minutes later, headlights appeared in the fog, moving too slow for highway traffic. They glided along the service road behind the station and vanished behind the dumpsters. No engine noise after that, just stillness. Marcy's grip tightened on the cup. "He's here," she said. I reached under the counter, fingers curling around the handle of the baseball bat I kept there. It wasn't much, but it made me feel less alone. The motion sensor by the outdoor ice freezer flicked on, off, then on again. Could have been a raccoon, could have been wind and bad wiring. The timing didn't feel accidental. When the patrol car finally rolled up, blue strobes washing the storefront, my lungs let out air I didn't know I was holding. 2 officers got out. One gestured for me to stay back. The other spoke through the glass. I cracked the inner door halfway, keeping my foot braced. "She's inside," I said. "Says someone followed her." The older officer nodded. "We'll talk to her," I turned. "They're here," I told Marcy. She didn't move. "They're not here for me," she whispered. "They're here for him." They had her step outside while I stayed behind the counter. The younger cop kept scanning the lot. The older one talked to her in low tones. Through the glass I could only catch fragments, her shaking her head, saying no over and over. After a minute the older officer came back. "You let her in?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "She said someone followed her." He nodded once. "She's listed missing from a psychiatric facility in Tur County. Walked out earlier tonight." "You did right calling it in." Behind him she stood by the cruiser looking straight at me, not angry, just emptied out. "Don't take me back to that man," she said suddenly. "Not to the officer, to me." The older cop turned. "All right, ma'am, let's talk in the car." He guided her into the back seat. She didn't fight, just watched the store until the door shut and broke the line of sight. When they drove off, I realized I was still gripping the bat. I set it down, turned off the coffee warmer, and listened. The quiet had waned again. About an hour later, CHP called back. No disabled vehicles reported near our exit. I thanked the dispatcher, hung up, and stared at the empty pumps. That should have been the end of it. A weird night to bring up at the next staff meeting. But my brain kept looping her words. He followed me. What if he had? What if she hadn't imagined any of it? A few days later, one of the officers swung by for coffee. I asked if they'd ever found her car. He shook his head. "Never saw one. She's back in care, though. No harm done." Then, almost as an afterthought, "Guess she's had a few incidents like that before." Runs off, shows up somewhere, says she's being followed. "By who?" I asked. He shrugged. "Doesn't describe the same person twice." I nodded, but something in me refused to file it away that cleanly. A week later, restocking mints, I found a wadded paper towel jammed behind the display. Damp, folded down into a hard little square. Inside, in pencil, someone had written, "He likes glass." I stood there rereading it until the words blurred. It wasn't proof of anything. It was just someone's fear pressed into paper. I couldn't throw it out. I dropped it into the safe with the cash because I didn't know where else to keep it. Now when I'm on nights, I don't buzz anyone in. Not ever. I pass what they need through the drawer. I call for help first. The bench sits under the brightest light, centered in the camera's view. The bat stays close. Dispatch is on speed dial. I think about her more than makes sense. Maybe she was sick. Maybe she was dangerous. Maybe she was right. Whatever the truth is, it hangs around this place. In the way headlights drift too slowly past the pumps, in the reflections on the windows. You learn, working nights, that danger doesn't always kick the door in. Sometimes it waits. Sometimes it knocks softly. Sometimes it smiles through the glass and asks you for warmth. That's what unsettles me most. That I opened the door once, thinking I was helping. And that somewhere out there, someone might know exactly how long it takes me to hesitate. When the morning shift shows up, I give them the same line. Quiet night, it's true enough. But every time the lock buzzes open for them, I hear an echo from that foggy night. Her voice, small and sure. Don't take me back to that man. The door clicks shut behind them, and I start another shift pretending the world outside the glass isn't still watching. Because here's the truth. Every night since, I've kept that folded paper towel in my wallet, not as evidence, as a reminder. Mercy and caution are a coin you only get to spend once. Working the closing shift at a grocery store sounds boring until you're the one locking up. By my third year, Saturday nights were routine. We closed at 10:00. By 9:30, the floors were buffed, the aisles mostly empty, and the playlist had shifted from pop to that generic instrumental stuff corporate thinks makes people shop faster. That night started like hundreds of others. I was covering self-checkout. Rachel, the manager on duty, was upstairs in the office doing end-of-day paperwork. The store had reached that particular calm where everything hums but nothing moves. One squeaky cart could be heard from 3 aisles away. 10 minutes, folks, I called down the main aisle. We're closing up. That's when I noticed him. A tall guy stood perfectly still in the cereal aisle, reading the back of a box with an intensity usually reserved for loan documents. Mid-40s, beard, dark hoodie. Didn't look drunk or high, just focused. Need help finding something? I asked, keeping it light. He looked up with a slow, polite smile. Just deciding, he said. All right, we're closing in 10, so. I'll be quick, he cut in, not rude, just confident in a way that made me think he wouldn't. I let it go. People get weirdly territorial about cereal. At 10:00 on the dot, the music cut. The closing announcement played. I locked the front doors. Through the office window, I watched Rachel do her final sweep: produce, frozen, dairy. When she hit dry goods, the man was gone. She gave me a thumbs up through the security glass. 10:01, I said to myself, clocking out of the register. He's gone. Or I think he is. We started the shutdown routine. Count tills, dump trash, kill sections of lights one by one. The hum of the fluorescents softened into the background drone of the HVAC. After hours, you notice each individual sound. The buzz of freezers, the clack of vents, your shoes on waxed linoleum. By 12:30, we were both upstairs in the small office that looked out over the floor. I was cross-checking inventory spreadsheets when Rachel stopped typing. "Did you hear that?" she asked. I shook my head. Footsteps. There it was again. Creak, step, pause, directly above us in the narrow employee hallway where the lockers and spare uniforms were. "Could be the pipes," I said, trying to sound like I believed it. "No," she said. "Listen." We both went still. The noise was too heavy for pipes. A few steps, then a metallic sound, like a zipper sliding open. Rachel grabbed the office flashlight and stood. "Come on." The upstairs hallway always felt off to me. It smelled faintly of detergent and metal, like a high school locker room that never quite aired out. Beige walls that never looked clean, no matter how often maintenance repainted them. We walked slowly, our footsteps echoing. Lockers lined both sides, each with a cheap metal handle and a padlock. At the far end, by the emergency exit, a small window threw in a square of orange light from the lot. Everything looked normal. No doors ajar, no dropped bags, no fresh scuffs on the floor. Rachel crouched, scanning the tile. Nothing. Then she stopped. Behind the last row of lockers, barely visible from the hall, sat a rolled sleeping bag. Next to it, 2 grocery bags, one full of water bottles, the other with bananas and trail mix. "Somebody nested," she whispered. A chill threaded through me. "You think he's still here?" She didn't answer, just pointed up at the ceiling vent. The metal grate above the lockers was bent slightly out of place. We went back to the office, locked the door, killed the lights, and pulled up the cameras. We had views of almost everything: aisles, registers, loading dock, but no camera in that hallway. The only angle near it showed the ladder in the back storage area that led up to the maintenance crawlspace beneath the roof. Rachel scrubbed back to about 9:50. On camera 12, we watched the cereal guy in crisp black and white. He took a box of frosted flakes, stared at the back, then glanced around. When the last customer walked past, he drifted toward the rear of the store. At 9:55, the ladder camera caught motion, a blur of shoulder and arm going up into the shadows. Then nothing. "He climbed up before we closed," Rachel said. "He's been up there this whole time." We locked the office, turned the lights off again, and called the police. The dispatcher told us to stay put and stay quiet. The line went dead, leaving only the whir of the computer fans and the low creak from above. We waited. Another sound overhead. A shuffle, then a slow drag, like someone shifting their weight across a surface they didn't want to squeak. It moved closer to the vent above the office, then stopped. We didn't talk. The officers arrived around 1:00 a.m. Two cruisers lit the front of the store in red and blue. One officer stayed downstairs. Two headed up with flashlights and a maintenance ladder. By the time we followed, the sleeping bag and supplies were still nestled behind the lockers. The officers spread out, one of them shining his light along the ceiling grid. "Hold up," he said, pointing to the vent. "That's been moved." He stepped onto a chair, lifted a ceiling tile, then lowered it and motioned for his partner. They went up with the ladder. I heard the crunch of insulation, the thud of someone shifting in a tight space. "Got something," one of them called. He came down holding a pair of boots, muddy, soles worn nearly through. "They're still warm," he said. "Whoever had them isn't far." They spent the next hour combing the roof, the ducts, the loading dock, the alley. The working theory was that he'd slipped out the rooftop access door to the side alley between our call and their arrival. They photographed the sleeping bag and food, bagged everything as evidence. The younger officer, who looked maybe a year older than me, tried to sound reassuring. "You did the right thing," he said. "Probably just someone homeless looking for warmth." "You were smart to check the cameras." I nodded, but the neatness of the setup bothered me. The sleeping bag rolled tightly, the food carefully sorted. It didn't feel like a desperate one-night hideout. It felt like routine. We opened on time the next morning. Corporate came in, reviewed the footage, and had a badge lock installed on the upstairs door. Rachel and I were told not to talk about it. No reason to alarm customers. A few days later, maintenance guy Mike pulled me aside. "You hear what they saw up there?" he asked. "The boots," I said. "No, above the tiles, insulation pulled back. Like someone had been sleeping up there too." That explained the zipper sound. He'd been using the vent cavity as storage, sealing it up each morning before opening. Mike grinned like it was an interesting bit of gossip. I didn't. I kept picturing 9:55 p.m. Him climbing that ladder while we rang out the last customers, the whole store moving around him while he settled into the ceiling above us. A week later, I was alone in the office finishing reports when I heard that same creak overhead. Same rhythm, same weight. I froze, then flipped the ceiling fan on like a kid hiding under white noise. A pinch of dust drifted down from the vent. I left without finishing the report. The next morning, Rachel had maintenance back up there. "All clear," they said. I believed them because I needed to. 3 weeks later, another store in our chain, same layout, same district, found sleeping gear in their ceiling. No cameras caught anyone leaving there either. They started to think whoever it was might be moving between buildings. The company contracted a private security firm. More locks, more cameras, motion sensors. But even now, if I walk into a grocery store and pass the cereal aisle, I look up first. I transferred departments soon after. I couldn't do closings anymore. Not after finding out the locked, silent store we thought belonged to us had someone else living inside it. Because once, I thought I knew who had left the building. I was wrong. I cleaned 12 floors every night. Same loop, vacuum, trash, bathrooms. My badge got me through the lobby at 9:45. The cleaning caddy trailed behind me like a tired pet. One earbud in, one ear open. Buildings talk if you listen. Vents sigh, pipes tick, elevators mutter to themselves. The marble lobby always looked too clean to be real. The air smelled like polish. The only face I saw was my own in the elevator's mirror as the doors slid shut and the floor numbers lit in sequence. That rhythm calmed me. By midnight, the city vanished into the building's glass. I liked it better that way. Fewer eyes. Floor 7 always slowed me down. A law office that left Keurig pods to fossilize and a women's restroom with a famously misinstalled stall door. Decades back, someone hinged it against the wall so that when it was closed, it hid itself entirely. You had to wedge in sideways to reach the toilet. It used to make me laugh. Buildings have quirks. So do the people who clean them. I made a habit of leaving that backward door open when I was done. A visual finished flag. A week into January, temperatures dropped below 10 degrees. On my second pass through 7, I noticed the door was shut again. I knew I'd left it open. I told myself a draft from the vent nudged it, but the hinge was stiff. It didn't swing on its own. 2 nights later, same thing. Open when I started, closed when I came back. I checked the hinge, still heavy. "You're chasing weird," I muttered. "Stop it or every noise becomes a ghost." At 2 a.m., I came back with the mop to hit the baseboards. Kneeling, I swept the mop head under each stall. Habit made me shine my flashlight under the backward one. 2 bare feet stood there, toes pointed toward me. Skin pale, no shoes, no twitch, no shift. For a moment my brain filed them as shapes, not human. Then understanding caught up. "Custodial," I said automatically. My voice sounded too loud. "Building S closed, I need you to answer." Nothing. "Ma'am," I tried again. Silence. The feet didn't move. Instinct split down the middle. One side, run, the other, don't turn your back. I backed out slowly, pushing the cart until its wheel bumped the hallway wall. My phone battery blinked red. No service in the core of the building. The wall phone in the janitor's closet gave a dead tone. The radio at my hip spat static once, then went quiet. The hall felt too long and too narrow at the same time. The restroom door stayed shut. If someone was in there, I couldn't just leave. If no one was in there, I was staring at an empty stall and losing it. Neither option made me feel sane. I took the elevator down 2 floors to security. Lewis, the overnight guard, sat at the desk with a thermos the size of a fire extinguisher. "Problem?" he asked. "Maybe," I said. "Bare feet." 7th floor women's room, backward door closed again. He didn't joke, didn't smirk. He just stood and grabbed his keys. "We go together," he said. The ride back up felt like the elevator was holding its breath. When the doors opened, my cart was still in the hall, exactly where I'd left it. The restroom door was still shut. No wet prints, no dirt on the tile. Lewis held up his flashlight. "You talk," he murmured. I took a step forward. "Custodial, security S with me. If you're in there, say something." Nothing. Lewis tipped his chin toward the door. I pulled. It resisted, then swung open. Empty. Just the crooked toilet, the fluorescent buzz, and a tank lid sitting slightly askew. No feet. No dust smear where they'd been. Lewis checked each stall. Nothing. Then he stepped back to the backward one and lifted the tank lid. Inside was a Ziploc bag, a toothbrush. A cheap cell phone double-wrapped in another baggie. We stared at it. He set the lid down carefully. "Somebody lived in a bathroom stall," he said. He called the second guard, Torre, and notified dispatch. While they swept the stairwells and mechanical rooms, I stood in the doorway cataloging every tick and rattle the building made. No one turned up. Lewis bagged the items, logged it as a possible overnight trespass, and told me to stick close until they finished their sweep. "Probably homeless," he said. His voice had the seasoned calm of someone who'd seen too much weird to be surprised. The next morning, the company told us not to mention it to tenants. Maintenance removed the backward stall door entirely. "Safety upgrade," they called it. I kept working. Nights don't stop because one thing is strange. After that, security added hourly patrols between 1:00 and 5:00 a.m. Lewis walked every floor. sometimes whistling so we'd know it was him. Maintenance started checking ceiling spaces. Management promised cameras in staff areas. None of that erased the memory of those feet. On my route, I picked up new habits. I knocked before entering a restroom. I announced myself even if the floor had been empty all night. I stopped wearing 2 earbuds. Every new creak got my full attention. The janitor who handled floor 3 told me she'd found fresh dust lines under a stall that same week. No feet, just the faint arc of a heel sliding. Management called it residual traffic. Lewis didn't. He started a notebook. "What's that for?" I asked. "Everything odd," he said. "Time, place, sound, buildings talk. You just have to remember what they said yesterday." For a week, nothing. The quiet pressed in. Working nights changes how you read a building. You stop assuming that empty equals safe. Silence feels like a living thing, holding its breath until you walk past. People think night shifts are lonely but peaceful. Sometimes they are. You hum to your vacuum, talk to yourself, count down hours until dawn. But every so often you feel it, a pause in the rhythm like something else inhaled at the same time you did. That's what fear is on a night crew, not jump scares. Just realizing the building's breath is out of sync with yours. I stayed another year before changing jobs. On my last week, I wrote a reminder on a sticky note and tucked it inside my cart behind the disinfectant bottle where only I'd see it. Knock, announce, back out. Simple, true, my own little rule book. Sometimes I dream about that tower, the glossy lobby, the elevator mirror, the lights switching off floor by floor. In the dream, I'm always back on 7. The stall door stands open. I do night shift maintenance at a downtown hospital. 12 years of coffee, checklists, and machine noise. The building never sleeps. It just trades the chaos of day for a slower rhythm that only the worn out recognize. My route is the same every hour. Boiler room, chillers, elevators, loading dock. Back through the east glass corridor that faces the staff parking lot. Machines are simple, they don't lie. They fail, leak, or squeal, but they don't pretend. Around 2:10 a.m. On one winter night, I was walking the east corridor, clipboard in hand, jotting down temperature readings. The glass wall looked out over the lot, rows of parked cars under flat white light. Usually at that hour, it's empty except for a nurse swapping shifts or security doing a pass. That night, someone was standing out there. At first I thought it was my reflection. Same height, same general shape. But when I cupped my hands around my face to block the glare, I saw him clearly. A man stood between 2 cars, perfectly still, facing the entrance doors. Arms hanging at his sides. That alone wouldn't have been unusual. Relatives get turned around. Visitors step outside to smoke and think. Grief makes people find strange corners. I picked up the phone by the door and called security. "Got a guy in the east lot," I said, "between rows 2 and 3, facing the main entrance." The dispatcher sounded distracted. "Both guards are on 5, patient issue. Can you keep eyes on him?" "Copy," I said and hung up. I flipped off the corridor lights to cut the glare. In the dim, the figure sharpened. Then I blinked and he was closer. 1 row closer to the building. Same posture, same angle. I pressed my face to the glass. Maybe it was another reflection, a trick from one of the patient room windows behind me. I decided to step outside to make sure. I unlocked the side door and walked just under the overhang, flashlight ready. The cold bit through my uniform. I swept the beam across the lot. Nothing. Asphalt, cars. A candy wrapper tumbling past a drain. I swung the light down the rows, across the crosswalk, around the gate. Empty. I turned to go back in and glance through the opposite window, the one farther down the corridor. He was there again, near the crosswalk now. Same stillness. Same direction, facing the doors. I hit the lock override, switching the doors to badge only, then called security again. "Still out there?" the dispatcher asked. "Closer," I said. "At the crosswalk now." She said she was sending one of the guards down in the cart. I stayed by the glass. The figure hadn't moved so much as swayed. A few minutes later, the golf cart's headlights cut through the lot. Harlan, the older guard, and Patel, the new one, pulled up near the gate. Harlan climbed out with a handheld spotlight and swept it over the cars, then along the row where I'd seen the man. The beam passed over the gate pillar and caught what looked like a sleeve disappearing behind it. Both of them stiffened. Harlan walked straight toward the column. Patel kept the light centered on it. By the time they reached it, there was nothing there. Just concrete, the gate arm, and a trash can half full of cigarette butts. They looked up at me through the glass. I shrugged and went out to meet them. Footprints, Patel said, pointing at the pavement near the crosswalk. Boot prints, cheap work boot tread, led from between the parked cars up toward the curb. Then stopped right at the painted line. Harlan knelt, touched one. Still damp, he said. Fresh. We swept the lot together in a slow grid, 3 beams of light crossing and recrossing. No movement, just the transformer humming and the occasional flicker of a security lamp. Back near the gate, I noticed a half-smoked cigarette propped filter down on the lip of the trash can. The ember still glowed. Fresh, Patel said again. Still warm. Harlan stared at it for a second. We'll check cameras, he said. We went back inside, the door's side shut behind us. In the security office, the lot feeds were grainy but clear enough. We rolled back to 2:10 a.m. Rows of parked cars, streetlight reflections on hoods. Then a shape appeared between 2 vehicles. Not a clear person, more of a silhouette edging out of the darker pixels. No face, no details, just a vertical smudge that hadn't been there before. That's him, I said. Or that's nothing, Harlan said. You know these cameras glitch, I'll mark the time. He logged it, filed it, and that should have been that. Around 3:00 a.m., walking past the east corridor again, I found myself slowing. The lot was empty, but the quiet felt wrong, like the air had flattened. The next night I ran into Abby, a nurse from ICU, by the badge reader at the same door. She looked rattled. You on last night? She asked. Yeah. Someone tried to tailgate my badge around 11. I thought it was a coworker, but when I turned around, nobody. Door didn't open. I thought maybe the sensor glitched. What time exactly? I asked. 11-ish. We logged it as an attempted tailgate, no entry. Later, when I looked at the security log, the time lined up almost perfectly with the first sighting. For a few weeks, nothing. Then late February, it started again. I was making my circuit, 2:12 a.m. give or take. The lot outside was slick with freezing rain, and there he was again, down by the gate this time, pale coat. Arms limp, head angled toward the entrance like he was trying to read the building. I didn't blink or look away. I just called it in. Figure in the lot, I said. At the gate, the dispatcher's tone flattened. Copy, sending Harlan and Patel. I kept the doors locked and stayed at the window. The golf cart rolled in. The spotlight swept the fence line, then landed on the gate pillar, right where I'd seen the shape before. This time I saw it happen. When the beam hit the space behind the pillar, something like a shoulder seemed to shimmer there for half a second, as if it were almost solid. Then it was gone. Harlan and Patel reached the pillar. Nothing behind it. No one in the shadow of the transformer box, just wet concrete, but there were prints again. 3 this time, spaced apart like steps, leading right to the base of the gate. Deep enough to hold a trace of water. And then nothing. No smear, no continuation. We stared at them in the mist and light. If this is a prank, Harlan said, it's a damn good one. We watched the cameras again. Same artifacts. A distortion where a person should have been. A streak of darker pixels sliding from one patch of shadow to another. No features, no clear outline, just motion wearing the idea of a human shape. The next morning, security debriefed with day management. Footage wasn't strong enough for police. Could be lens noise, they said. By 9, though, 3 different staffers had reported odd encounters. One nurse said a man called the nurse's station, claiming his wife was admitted and he'd left something in her room. When she explained visiting hours were over, he repeated the same sentence 3 times, word for word like a recording. The number was blocked. An orderly reported seeing a man standing by the hospice garden statue earlier that week. Same still stance, arms at his sides. When he approached, the man turned and walked into the gap between streetlights and vanished into the dark. Administration added the staff lot to the official patrol route. I didn't argue. I wanted it watched too. After that, I made the lot part of my own rounds. 2, 10, 2, 33, 00. I'd pause at the glass, sometimes step a few feet outside just to hear the night and see if it sounded empty. Once, watching the monitor, I noticed a faint smear near the crosswalk. Not clear enough to point at and say, person. Just enough motion that your brain wanted to connect it into a shape. That's what gets under your skin in places like this, not obvious hauntings. Things pretending, movements that almost make sense but don't. You can't reason with something that won't act like it's real. It's been 4 years since that winter. We still call it the lot incident. Harlan's retired, Patel works days now. Abby left nursing altogether. I'm still here, same route, same hours. Every so often, the east entrance doors slide open and shut with no badge swipe. Sensors misread things, gurney straps, moths, reflections. But if it happens around 2:10 a.m., I always check the monitor before going back to my checklist. People ask what I think it was. I don't give them ghost stories. I tell them what I know. Twice, a figure stood in that lot when no one should have been there. Twice, it appeared closer to the building without the cameras showing it walk. Twice, the footprint stopped at the curb. Everything else, the phone calls, the garden sighting, the cigarette, just fills in the outline of something we still don't have a name for. Work enough nights, and you learn some things aren't meant to be fixed, only documented. Night shifts at a roadside motel are supposed to be uneventful. Slow, predictable, a kind of quiet that hums more than it sounds. My job was simple: keep the front desk tidy, brew the 4 a.m. coffee, balance the drawer. Make sure no one snuck into the pool after hours. The place wasn't fancy. 32 rooms, 2 floors, doors facing the parking lot. A ficus leaning toward the air vent. A faded vacancy sign that buzzed whenever the wind hit it just right. Most nights, I wiped the counter, refilled the muffin tray, and listened to the swamp cooler wheeze. January 12, 2018 started no different. No walk-ins, no noise from the taqueria next door, not even a forgot my toothbrush call, just stillness. Around 1:15 a.m., I was flipping through the guest ledger when I heard footsteps overhead. 3 slow steps, not in the hallway, not outside, directly above me, back and forth pacing from the ceiling. Room 108. Our system screen showed all the rooms and their status. 108, vacant, cleaned, locked at 6:22 p.m., no key activity since. I dialed housekeeping out of habit before I remembered they'd gone home hours ago. The line rang once and cut off. Another step, then another. Then silence thick enough that I could hear my own breathing. I stared up at the ceiling until doing nothing felt worse than doing something. Finally, I grabbed the master key clipboard, my small maglite, and stepped outside. The second-floor walkway faced the freeway. From below, everything looked normal. Porch lights glowing. Curtains closed. A cat skittered between the vending machines. At the top of the stairs, I turned the corner and saw it. A thin strip of light under 108's door. The kind of dull glow you get from a bathroom fixture. That room shouldn't have had any lights on. The last guest had checked out that morning. I'd watched Marta, the housekeeper, clean it and drop the key into the tray myself. Maybe she'd left a lamp on. Maybe a timer malfunctioned. As I got closer, the curtain shifted. Just a tiny pull inward, like 2 fingers had pinched the edge and adjusted it. Then stillness. My hand went cold on the key ring. I crouched slightly and peered under the curtain from the outside. Darkness. I slid the MasterCard through the lock. Red, again. Red. Third time, green. The deadbolt turned, but it resisted like something heavy pressed up against it from inside. I put my shoulder into it and felt it drag a few inches. Front desk, I called through the gap. Maintenance check. No answer. I pushed the door open far enough to lean in. The room was hotel brochure perfect. Bedspread tight. Pillows crisp. The only imperfection was a shallow ripple at the foot of the bedspread, like someone had rested a hand there and lifted it again. Water noise pulled me toward the bathroom. The fan roared and the shower ran full blast. Front desk, I called again, louder. Nothing. I stepped in just far enough to reach the switch and flipped the fan off. The sudden quiet made the shower sound sharper. I turned the handle. The water stopped. The tub was empty. No wet footprints on the tile. No towel off the rack. Behind me, the closet door creaked, just an inch. A soft, dry scrape of wood on metal. I turned toward it. Hello, silence. I backed to the front door, keeping the closet in my peripheral vision, reached around the frame and pulled the door shut from the outside. The latch clicked into place. I slid the deadbolt across with my thumb and felt it seat fully. Back at the desk, I keyed the radio. "Ron, you up?" Static, then my manager's groggy voice. "What's going on?" "Activity in 108, I said. "Door was locked, light under it, shower running, room supposed to be empty. You went in?" "I had to check." "It's locked now." He exhaled through his nose. "Okay, call non-emergency, I'm on my way in." I called Tucson PD, gave them the room number and details. The dispatcher told me to stay out of the room until an officer arrived. Fine by me. I poured myself coffee, then dumped it out untouched. Couldn't shake the sense that the ceiling above me was listening. A cruiser pulled in at 1:32. The officer was a woman around my age with a neat bun and a face that didn't miss much. She took my statement and asked to see the room. We climbed the stairs together. No light under the door this time. She knocked twice, waited, then slid the MasterCard in and stepped back, hand near her holster. We went in. Everything looked exactly like I'd left it. Bed made, bathroom dry, closet empty. Even the ripple in the bedspread was gone. Back at the desk, she asked for the security footage. I pulled up the exterior corridor and stairwell feeds and scrubbed to 117. Nothing. No one going in or out of 108. The only movement was a couple of moths harassing the camera. "If it happens again," she said, handing me her card, "call us before you go in." "Don't check alone." She drove off. Ron arrived 10 minutes later, shirt half-buttoned, hair still damp. He went up and inspected 108 himself, as if the room might admit something to him that it hadn't to us. "Probably a pressure surge," he said back at the desk. "Valves in those showers can kick on and off. Deadbolt's sticky too. Just don't open it again during your shift." He gave me a new rule: log it, lock it, leave it. The next night I came in a little early. I didn't mention 108. I didn't have to. Housekeeping was already calling it the hot room. By 12:45 a.m., the silence was almost daring me to relax. At 1:00 a.m., footsteps overhead. Not pipes, not the building settling, measured steps. I picked up the phone and called non-emergency right away. Same dispatcher, same calm voice. Same promise. An officer was on the way. It was the same officer as the night before. We went up together. The little strip of tape I'd placed across the latch as a tamper-evident seal was unbroken. "You're sure this is the room?" she asked. "I'm sure." She unlocked the door, opened it halfway, and paused. The main light was already on. The bathroom fan ran again, this time without the shower. The air in the room felt warmer than the hallway. "Anyone else have a key?" she asked. "Just management and me," I said. She checked the closet. Nothing, turned off the fan, listened. I could hear the mini fridge humming, the faint tick of the AC. And above us, footsteps, soft thuds, a slow shift of weight directly overhead. We were on the top floor. The officer and I locked eyes. She didn't say anything, just thumbed her radio and jogged for the stairwell. I followed as far as the lot. From the pavement, she swung her flashlight up along the roofline and stopped. Someone was on the roof. A man crouched low, moving along the edge like he thought staying close to the ledge made him invisible. Hands and knees, creeping toward the back of the building. The beam caught the sheen of his jacket. "Hey, stop!" she yelled, already running. He didn't look back. He dropped off the back side of the roof, a good 8-foot fall, disappearing behind the ice machine. By the time she rounded the corner, he was sprinting toward the tree line behind the property. "Dispatch, Unit 12, she said into her radio. "Male suspect fleeing westbound into the woods behind the motel. Need a unit by the drainage canal on the far side." Branches snapped in the dark. Her flashlight carved slices of white in between the trunks. Then he was just gone. Backup arrived in minutes. They swept the woods, the canal edge, the frontage road. They found him about an hour later on the far side, walking along the shoulder like he'd just gone out for air. No ID, no bag. He told them he was looking for a place to stay. They cuffed him without a fight. Later, when officers came back for the security footage, one of them mentioned it casually. "He's not saying much," the officer said, "but he had room keys on him. One of them matches 108. Maintenance checked the roof access the next day. Locked, cobwebbed. Rust ring on the hasp from being undisturbed. Housekeeping refused to clean 108 alone." Ron rolled his eyes but quietly started pairing them up for efficiency. 3 days later, a couple from Phoenix checked out of 108 and left a note at the desk. "Nice stay, quiet motel. Only weird thing. Water ran for a few minutes around 1 a.m. Thought it was next door." Ron laughed when he read it and tossed it toward the trash. "I fished it out and pinned it to the back of the incident board." He didn't say anything, but he didn't assign that room again for 2 weeks. "I stayed on nights. That's what you do. You keep the coffee hot, smile at check-ins, and don't let the strange things expand further than the corners of your own head." Still, every time I walk past 108, I slow down. I look at the frame. I listen for water. People ask what I think it was. A squatter who learned the cracks in our routine. A drifter who knew how to live in the spaces between shifts. Something worse. Maybe that man wasn't the first to wait in there. Maybe he wasn't the last. All I know is this. Every time I hear running water in a place that's supposed to be empty, I think of that room. If these stories made you realize how dangerous routine can be, hit the like button, subscribe so you don't miss the next horror story. And tell me in the comments which one got under your skin the most. And since we're talking about feeling safe where you shouldn't, click now to watch 4 disturbing Home Alone horror stories, because sometimes the place that should protect you doesn't. Thanks for watching. Stay alert, stay safe. I'll see you in the next nightmare.